Well, I think we are on the air. As I look out over this vast audience, I see there's a few people missing. We had a rainstorm last night, so it's not a super hot day today, but it sure is muggy. Um, let have you join me in the book of Exodus, chapter 20. Okay, Exodus chapter 20. We've been looking at the Ten Commandments, and if you remember, probably remember, first commandment is, "Thou shalt have no other gods before me." And last week we talked about the second one, "Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image." And been thinking about that one because there was more I wanted to say about that than what we did last week. So let's read Exodus 20, verses 4 and 5. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image, or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water underneath the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them. For I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me. We talked a lot about God's jealousy, and that really speaks of his desire to protect his name, that he has the right to be worshipped. He is our creator. He is the creator of all things. There's no one greater than he. He is holy. He is just. He deserves to be reverenced and worshipped. But for a second, go back to verse 4. It says, "Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image, or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth." I do not believe this means you're not allowed to take a picture of something. I don't believe it. I don't believe it's against art for art's sake, like sculptures, like modeling clay, or anything that we do. Because verse 4 and verse 5 are a continuous sentence. It says that we are not to make an image, and then verse 5 says you're not to bow down to them. You're not to worship them. You're not to serve them. God does care what we think about him. He is jealous of his name. He's jealous of his character. He's jealous. He's watchful over what we think about him and how we treat him. You know, our world was created for God to show his worthiness. There was rebellion in heaven. I know it's eternity, but still time passed as far as we're concerned. Talk about eternity. The Bible speaks about things that have happened and things that are going to happen. So we live in that kind of a world. But we were created for God to demonstrate that Satan is a liar, he's a cheat, he's a fake, and that God deserves our worship. He wants his love for us to be demonstrated, his wisdom to be demonstrated, and so forth. He's jealous over us. He doesn't want us to be tricked. He doesn't want us to fall into temptation. He doesn't want us to fail. Just as we are jealous over our children, we don't want them to make bad mistakes. We don't want them to get into any type of habits or lifestyles that is not pleasing to God. So as we are jealous over our children, as we watch over them, and as we care for them, as we guide them, God has the same care for us. We're made in his image, and we we are to honor him with all of our lives. I want to look at a couple verses here in Exodus. Go to chapter 22, and let's read verse 20. Exodus 22, verse 20. He that sacrificeth unto any god save unto the Lord only, he shall be utterly destroyed. Do you have any idea what utterly destroyed means? Yeah, it's not a slap on the wrist. God takes worship seriously. God takes his position as God of all very seriously. The next chapter, chapter 23, and verse 24. Chapter 23, verse 24. Thou shalt not bow down to their gods, meaning the Canaanites. You know, Israel was, when the Ten Commandments were given, Israel had just begun the exodus out of Egypt as far as the traveling from Egypt to Canaan. And God says, hey, the people you see there, you will not follow their worship. You will not do what they do. This verse says, thou shalt not bow down to their gods. You shall not serve them, nor do after their works. Their works were evil, immoral to a degree that we don't even like to talk about. He says, when you see their gods meaning images and idols, you shall utterly overthrow them and quite break down their images. What happened during the 40 days that Moses... That's a question. Do you remember what happened when Moses was in the presence of God on Mount Sinai? These chapters, from chapter 20 on for about 12 chapters, Moses is on Mount Sinai. He's talking to God face to face. He is receiving not just the Ten Commandments, which were pronounced in the presence of Israel, but he's receiving instruction about the tabernacle, about the priesthood, about the sacrificial system that God installed or instituted. And do you remember what happened in 40 days while Moses was on Mount Sinai? Yes. That's in Exodus chapter 32. The people left to themselves. The people who had just been delivered from slavery in Egypt. The people who saw God bring 10 plagues on Egypt. The people who saw God divide the Red Sea so they could walk through, and when the Egyptians tried to follow them, they all were drowned because the sea turned on them. They very quickly, and it's hard, I think it's hard for us, at least in America in modern times, to think of people who need an image to worship. But look what it says here in these first 6 verses of chapter 32. And when the people saw that Moses delayed to come down out of the mount, the people gathered themselves together unto Aaron, Moses' brother, older brother, and said unto him, Up, make us gods, which shall go before us. For as for this Moses, this guy that brought us out of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him. 40 days, that's a long time. They thought he was burned up in the fire that was still boiling on Mount Sinai. They thought that he got too close to God, or he had some kind of an accident. He didn't come back. They're waiting day after day. When's Moses coming back? So their idea is, Aaron, we need to replace Moses. We need to replace God. So Aaron said unto them in verse 2, Break off the golden earrings which are in the ears of your wives, of your sons, your daughters, and bring them unto me. Just to mention this, who's wearing earrings in this verse? Boys and girls. I read a passage that said that Oriental people, people from the eastern part of the world, and Hebrews, the Israelites, they wore gold. They wore jewelry. The men did. Rings, earrings. I don't think they had piercings like we see today. But Aaron says, break off your gold earrings and bring them unto me. Verse 3, and all the people break off the golden earrings which are in their ears and brought them unto Aaron. And he received them at their hand and fashioned it with a graving tool after he had made it a molten calf. They said, these are from their earrings. This is from their jewelry. What did the people say? These be thy gods, O Israel, which brought thee up out of the land of Egypt. How could they do that? When Aaron saw it, he built an altar before it. And Aaron made proclamation and said, tomorrow is a feast to the Lord. We'll end with verse 6. And they rose up early on the morrow, offered burnt offerings, and brought peace offerings. People sat down to eat and to drink and rose up to play. I'm not going to try to fill in the blanks, but they ate and then they rejoiced. They celebrated. That is, to me, anybody who thinks that the Bible is a production of man and some legends, who would write this about their own history? That they left God so quickly and followed an idol. It's just hard to believe. It's just in the nature of man to want to worship, and for some reason, I don't know, it's helpful for some people to see an image or an idol or just a depiction of who God is. I was thinking about the song in the 1970s. There was a revival in America. It was called the Jesus People Revival. A lot of hippies. These are the flower children that would sleep in the park, and go back to nature. It was. A lot of them got saved and became Christians, but there was a song that one of them sang. It says, I don't care if it rains or freezes, long as I've got my little plastic Jesus on the dashboard of my car. They were making fun of it. They weren't promoting it. But do you remember that, Sherry? Oh, well, I'm older than she is. I'm older than she is. But we used to see little images on the dash of a car. You remember that, seeing that. You don't remember seeing little plastic statuette about this tall? Well, Catholics had St. Christopher. They used St. Christopher, but sometime in that, shortly after that time period, St. Christopher was declared to be a nobody, that it wasn't really a St. Christopher. Others would have a little image of supposedly Jesus, and it was on their dashboard, so when they're driving, God's going. It's just, we can have a tendency to worship something, but that's just a different kind of a world for me. So God says you're not supposed to worship, you're not supposed to pray to, you're not supposed to bow down, and we see that. You mentioned Catholicism. We see that practice, that the idea of bowing down to an image or to praying to an image. It doesn't mean, I don't believe it means you shouldn't have a picture that looks like that is what people think Jesus looked like, hanging on your wall. I don't believe that's idol worship. I don't believe it means you can't have artwork. That's but the sentence includes, don't make an image of anything and bow down and worship it. That's the context. Okay, let's go back to Exodus chapter 20. The third first commandment is, thou shalt have no other gods before me. Second commandment, you shall not make unto thee a graven image and bow down and worship it. And in verse 7, we have the third commandment, thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless who taketh his name in vain. God is he's protective over his name. He's protective over his reputation, so to speak, how we define him, how we think of him. He says, don't use my name in vain, or don't use it loosely. Don't use it carelessly. The Lord will not hold him guiltless that takes his name in vain. Turn to Leviticus. Exodus, Leviticus is the next chapter, the next book. Leviticus chapter 19 and verse 12. Leviticus is all about the Levitical system, the tribe of Levi that Moses was from, and Aaron was the first high priest. There's just chapter after chapter of things relating to the worship that God defined for his people. And Leviticus 19 in verse 12 says, you shall not swear by my name falsely, neither shalt thou profane the name of thy God. I am the Lord. We're not to profane his name. We're not to make light of it. We're not to use his name carelessly. And he says, you shall not swear by my name falsely. When a person swears by God's name, they're making a vow. And they're giving an oath. There were vows in worship of what a person would, let's say, I will offer a sheep, or I offer an oxen in sacrifice. And God says, just do not use my name carelessly. Don't use it casually. Don't use it less than respectful. In Bible college, we had an instructor, a lady, who had a lesson on minced oaths. Remember that, Sherry? You ever hear the phraseology of minced oath? She was talking about things that we use. Instead of using God's name, we put in another name that sounds like it. Let me give an example. Do you ever say dang it or darn it? What does that relate to? It does. To say, when a person says D-A-M-N, damn, it refers to damnation. And damnation literally is condemning someone to hellfire, to exclude them from God's presence. And so she was saying, be careful in your language, because we can be, in her mind, it was very serious not to even assimilate something like swearing falsely. Dag nabbit. And it surprised me at the time, because there are things like people will say geez instead of Jesus. Gee whiz, and hearing that as a child, I never thought of that as being related to Jesus' name or God's name. But there are things, gosh darn it, that's a play on the GD phrase, right? And it made some sense. I thought it was kind of silly at the time, practically, but I was childish even then. But God says, don't swear falsely by my name. He actually said his name is to be used, but only in a respectful manner. Look at Deuteronomy, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, chapter 10, verse 20. Yes. Yes. People, I did mean to say that. Sherry just said, when people say, oh God this, it is using, there is only one God. And so when you say that, you're making a reference that is not proper. We can get in the habit of saying things like, heaven help me, you know, and say it lightly, not when we're drowning or something. Or God is my witness. I did not run that red light, you know. Well, we have habits of saying certain things like that. So help me God. Yeah. God strike me dead, you know. We it this using God's name lightly is something we do need to be careful about. In Deuteronomy chapter 10, verse 20, look what God says. Thou shalt fear the Lord thy God, in him shalt thou serve, to him thou shalt cleave, and swear by his name. We're actually told to swear by his name. That means I believe it means if you're in a jury box or you're in a testimony, you're at a trial and you're needed to testify, and they say, do you swear the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth? I think it is proper to say, so help me God, I will. Not that we do it lightly. I was looking at I'll look it up here in a minute. Go back to, we read Leviticus 19:12. You shall not swear by my name falsely. That's what God said. He actually said that his name was proper to use as like a stamp that, hey, I'm dead serious about this. I'll risk my life rather than to be false about it. Go to Numbers chapter 30 and verse 2. I want to look something up because I had it up earlier. I can find it. Numbers chapter 30, verse 2. If a man vow a vow unto the Lord, or swear an oath to bind his soul with a bond, he shall not break his word. God doesn't say to don't do it. But if you do it, do not break it. He shall not break his word. He shall do according to all that proceedeth out of his mouth. God seems to be saying the way we treat a contract. If you sign a contract, that stands. God says when you say something, if you seal it with a bond, with an oath, as God is my witness, so to speak, this is what I will do for you. This is what I will give you. God is not condemning that. What he's condemning is not being faithful. Aha, I found what I wanted. If you make a vow, keep it. Go back to Deuteronomy 23, verse 21 to 23. Deuteronomy chapter 23. 21, 22, and 23. When thou shalt vow a vow unto the Lord thy God, thou shalt not slack to pay it. For the Lord thy God will surely requite it of thee. It would be a sin to thee. If If you tell God you're going to do something, you make a vow, and you got to do it. But if thou shalt forbear to swear, it shall be no sin in it. God says, I'm not telling you you have to make an oath. I'm not telling you you have to make a vow in my name. If you do it, you better do it. You better follow through. Verse 23, that which is gone out of thy lips thou shalt keep and perform, even a free will offering, according as thou hast vowed unto the Lord thy God, which thou hast promised with thy vow. God takes what we say very seriously. He wants us to follow through on what we say to do. That's an area of my life I am ashamed of, that I have told people I'll do this, and then I don't get it done. It's a breach of promise, and God takes that very seriously. I want to remind you something. There is an oath of office for the President of the United States. When the President is elected, there's an oath given in front of all the people, hand on the Bible. It's going to be right hand. I'm not changing. I do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of the President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. That's the oath. You know what's usually added? So help me God. You know who started that? George Washington. George Washington, the first president. He took the oath and he says, I to the best of my ability, so help me God. Now, that's not using God's name in vain. It's not using it lightly. It's saying, God, I'm dependent upon you to help me do the very best that I do wish to do. You make a vow, keep it. You don't have to make a vow. Let's go to Matthew chapter 5, and I'm going to end with this. Matthew chapter 5, beginning with verse 33. Matthew 5:33, we're going to read down through verse 37. This is Jesus speaking. I believe this is I don't know if this is a Sermon on the Mount or not. But again, you've heard it been said by them of old, thou shalt not forswear thyself, but shalt perform unto the Lord thine oaths. But I say unto you, swear not at all, neither by heaven, for it's God's throne, nor by the earth, for it's his footstool, neither by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great King. What does he say? Neither shalt thou swear by thy head, because thou canst not make one hair white or black. And he sums it up by saying, let your communication be yea, yea, nay, nay. For whatsoever is more than these cometh of evil. People have a right to see this and say, it's wrong to swear. If I go before a judge, I will affirm that I intend to tell the truth. They accept that. You don't have to say, I swear before God. But I believe really what Jesus is saying is, you guys, you swear by the temple. Oh, you swear by heaven. Heaven help me. You're using oaths like that instead of just being honest and trustworthy, so that your yes means yes, your no means no. I'm sure there's contradicting views of whether there is a commandment not to swear on if you testify. But what Jesus is definitely saying is, if you have to use an oath for somebody to believe you, there's something wrong with you anyway. God says, just be honest, be truthful, be consistent. So he honors his name. He doesn't want us to use it in vain or use it lightly.